Welcome to Sullivan and Cromwell Sidebar, where we talk with our different litigation partners about some of the most interesting legal issues they've seen in their careers and what they are seeing on the horizon, among other topics. I'm Jay Clayton, and today I'm joined by Tony Lewis, who co-heads both our national security practice and cybersecurity practice. His practice focuses on international and government investigations and on cybersecurity incident response and advice. Tony previously served as the Deputy Chief of the Terrorism and Export Crimes Section for the United States Attorney's Office for the Central District of California. During more than 10 years of service, he prosecuted violations of U.S. sanctions and export controls, espionage and economic espionage, sophisticated cybercrimes, and financial fraud and criminal tax cases. Kind of an amazing array of cases and experience. Tony has been a partner at Sullivan and Cromwell since 2021. Welcome, Tony.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for speaking with me, Jay.
Why don't we start, and I know that you have some restrictions because your cases are so interesting, but with some of the most interesting issues you've worked on throughout your career.
Yeah, a lot of my work is investigations, and I've been fortunate to work on sensitive and significant matters. One of the things that I've found most interesting about national security practice is the way that foreign policy can really animate the work. In investigations, oftentimes there's looking at conduct by people at whatever level in the organization. Did they violate policy or the law? What's the regulatory overlay? But in cases that fall into what I think of as national security, sensitive technology or dealing with a sanctioned country or entity, the investigation and the advocacy are really informed by foreign policy considerations. What is the objective of the sanctions program at issue? The country that we're talking about, a U.S. ally or a country that's viewed by the government as a threat or somewhere in between? What's the technology that's at issue? Who is that important to? Understanding and then explaining those dimensions makes for really interesting work.
That's a great place to start because much of the work you do is, at its core, motivated by the same sense of fairness and justice that any other type of criminal case is motivated by. But it really does depend on the foreign policy objective and other considerations of foreign relations. Maybe talk a little bit about how you help clients understand that overlay, particularly clients who it may be the first or second time that they're dealing with issues of this type.
Yeah, often there is a sort of discussion about the U.S. government's role. There's, as you know, a long arm of the law when it comes to U.S. government enforcement powers. But we've had a number of cases that involve Russian sanctions as they were developing, and there were issues where clients were trying to understand how they applied and whether they should apply to them, and having a deep understanding as to what the objectives of those sanctions were, because they were tailored, really helped us help our clients navigate those issues. I also think having spent some time behind the curtain, so to speak, working on classified matters, it helps at least being able to explain the mechanics, the objectives, the sensitivities, in a way that, at least at a level of generality, can help guide companies when they're dealing with those kinds of issues.
Yeah, at S&C, we pride ourselves, we use the word generalist, but I think we pride ourselves on understanding the complete context. And you alluded to something there, which is the economic realities of the situation and the fact that sanctions are designed to have an economic effect. Can you talk about what we call our generalist approach and how you use the resources of Sullivan and Cromwell and outside resources to bring that kind of economic context to your advice?
Yeah, of course. So I started at S&C 20 years ago before I went to the Department of Justice, and being a generalist has helped me throughout my career in and out of government. I think at a fundamental level, it's about thinking strategically about a matter. It's not just about finding a right legal answer, but understanding that I and we on our team are giving legal advice. Sometimes it's about litigation or enforcement risk, but it's advice. and that we're doing our best work when we're helping our clients solve the entire problem. I mean, I work with my partners on disclosure issues, on employment issues, regulatory issues, and we work together to make those pieces fit together. And I think at least as important as understanding that there are other interests and components of a client besides the legal organ, and that when we give advice, sometimes there's a clear answer and sometimes there isn't. But at the end of the day, that's going to be evaluated in the context of a business with its own set of objectives and priorities. And that's all the more reason to really understand that business context and to sort of dial open the aperture and think about things broadly. And that's sort of how I think about being a generalist.
Well, that's super important. And you mentioned understanding the business, and you also mentioned being behind the curtain. Let me ask you a direct question that I'm sure your clients ask you, which is, you've helped me understand the purpose of the sanction or the purpose of some other law and what activity it's trying to restrict. Does the government understand that I'm perfectly happy to comply with that, but I'd like them to understand what business I can do and that I am trying to do that business appropriately?
I mean, yeah, I think that is certainly one of the messages that we convey, and it's an important part of our advocacy, is making sure that the government, whether it's in an enforcement context or in regulatory advisory context, understands that our clients are trying to be compliant and that there are business realities they work within, but that they want to know where the line is so that they can try to meet it.
And is the government receptive to the fact that people have to make a living?
I think in general they are. It is, yes. Obviously, it's case dependent, and there are some enforcement matters that they've got a lot of steam behind them, and that particular argument may or may not resonate. But I think it certainly does. It's part of the equation and part of that discussion in our advocacy.
Yeah, and look, I think those are some of the most challenging discussions. You've become a leader in the practice here at Sullivan and Cromwell relatively early in your partnership, and congratulations on that, and well deserved. What advice do you have for associates who are looking to become a partner, or lawyers who are just looking to grow into leadership roles here at Sullivan and Cromwell?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the touchstone is to keep the highest standards and don't let work leave your desk unless it's your very best work. Some advice that a friend gave to me who wasn't a lawyer, and before I was a lawyer, was whatever job you want to have next, whatever company, firm you're at, try to be doing it before you have it. I tell associates that all the time. Think about what happens next. When you finish your research, what's the partner you're working with going to do with it? Does this need to be distilled down to concise advice for a client? For associates that are working directly with clients, the same holds true. What is our client contact going to do with it next? They very often have other stakeholders in their organization, and thinking about what the next steps are in any of the work we're doing is important to sort of serve associates well as they manage those relationships, and also to make sure that we're doing our best work and giving our best.
Great advice. And picking up on that theme, and something that I know you're good at, what's the next thing for you? As in, what's the next thing on the horizon for our national security practice? Where do you see the puck going?
Yeah, there's a lot of focus on strategic technology and strategic commodities. And I think you see that in inbound and outbound investment rules from a regulatory perspective. You certainly see it on the enforcement side. You see regulators flexing their enforcement authorities in a way and with a focus that really hasn't been seen in years past. It can be semiconductors, it can be quantum computing. There are a number of different areas that are bespoke military technologies, but also so-called dual-use technologies that are more and more in focus. And I think the U.S. government is thinking strategically about how to address that, both from making that a compliance priority for companies, but also making some regulatory guardrails that companies need to follow that are new and hard for companies to understand.
And I know you're acting proactively with our clients in that area. I think one of the things that we also miss, and this will be my final question, is not only do you need to look at those things from a restrictions and regulation point of view, but also the U.S. government is a consumer of a number of those products and assisting our clients in that regard. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, with having government customers and being essentially government contractors, that adds another dimension. And that's true both for sort of how they manage their relationships. And there's obviously a large government contracting overlay, but it also makes some of the consequences from an enforcement perspective all the more acute, because it's not just a sort of penalty, it's a relationship with their customer. And so investigations that, if it were another context, may not be treated with the same attention, do get a fair amount of attention for those types of companies and our clients, because they bring sort of higher stakes in other areas than other types of investigations.
Well, Tony, you work in a fascinating, complex, and evolving area. It's been my great pleasure to talk to you today, and I wish you the best and continued luck in your career.
Thanks so much, Jay.